What is going on, you guys? Today we are recapping the awesome sci-fi movie Dune. The movie begins in a very distant future on a planet called Arrakis. On this planet, something called spice, a valuable substance that's used for various things such as interstellar travel, is mined abundantly. The Harkonnens, a powerful and technologically advanced race, come from a different planet to ravage and harvest the Arrakis. By controlling the spice production, the Harkonnens became even richer than the Emperor himself. The inhabitants and warriors of Arrakis fought bravely to free Arrakis from the Harkonnens, but failed miserably, and many of them died in battle. One day, by the Imperial decree, the Harkonnens were simply gone. On a different planet known as Caladan, the homeworld of House Atreides, the ruler's son Paul wakes up after having the same dream again. While having breakfast with his mother Jessica, Paul complains about the ceremony that they're forced to attend to pay respect to the Emperor. Paul asks his mother to pass him the water, and she tells him to use the voice, a skill that runs in her family, where if he uses it, he can make her give it to him. Concentrating, he exerts all efforts to command her into doing it, but seconds later, she gets control of herself and tells him that he was almost there. Later, Paul goes to his room and reads about the planet that they were about to move to. That afternoon, the Atreides family stands outside, awaiting the arrival of the Emperor, with their large army accompanying them. After they arrive and the announcement is made, a representative reads out loud the decree the Emperor had made about the Atreides family taking over Arrakis. In front of witnesses from different families, Atreides puts down his seal of acceptance. After the ceremony, Paul goes to meet his uncle Duncan and informs him about the dream that he's been having that shows him his uncle's death. Duncan doesn't take it seriously, but humorously indulges his nephew. After speaking to his uncle, Paul goes to his training session with Gurney, who pushes him to his limits, frightening him with stories about the Harkonnens and telling him that he needs to be strong. That night, while Paul was sleeping, his mother wakes him up and tells him to get ready. After he gets dressed and goes to meet her, Jessica tells him that the Reverend's mother, Gaius, who was the truth slayer of the Emperor himself, was in their house and explains that she was her teacher at the Bene Gesserit school, and Jessica tells him that Gaius would like to meet him. When he meets the elderly woman, she asks him to put his hand in a small box and threatens to kill him with a poison needle if he takes it out. Suddenly, Paul begins to feel excruciating pain, letting Gaius into his dream. When the test was over, she allows him to remove his hand and he sighs in relief. Gaius leaves accompanied by Jessica and chastises her on the way. She tells her that she was ordered to bear only a girl, but her pride made her think that she could give birth to the Kazakh Haderach. Looking at her intently, she tells her that they have other prospects if Paul fails his promise. After Gaius leaves, Jessica's startled by her son, who asks her what the woman meant when she said that he was the one. Jessica explains that they've been crossing bloodlines for thousands of years to bring forth the one that's powerful enough to bridge space and time, letting him know that the one is very close or perhaps already there. A few days later, Paul arrives in Arrakis with his family and is received with the utmost respect. Once they arrive at the palace, Jessica comes across a handmaiden concealing a weapon. When confronted, she presents the weapon and tells Jessica that if they're truly the one, then the weapon was meant for them. In his quarters, Paul is attacked by a small device Harkonnens use for assassination. When his father, Duke Leto, hears of the matter, he sends out his best men to find the spy after his boy. On a Harkonnens ship, Gauss was speaking to their leader, Braun Vladimir. Knowing what they were planning, she tells him that no one must find out what happened to the House Atreides, but asks him to spare Jessica and her son, who are under their protection, to which Vladimir gives his word. Back in Arrakis, Leto and his son were pleased to see that Duncan has returned from his mission. He tells them that the native people had watched him search for them for days until they finally sent out a warrior to kill him. He explains that he had never come that close to dying, but once he'd won the fight, they let him stay with them for 4 weeks. And there, he learned that there were millions of them them instead of the estimated 50,000, and Duncan then introduces the leader of the natives, known as Fremen, who asks for the Duke to leave them alone after they've gotten their spice. Leto promises that their caves will be theirs forever and that they'll never be hunted as long as he governs the planet. The following morning, Leto and Paul, along with their men and a native guide, go out to the desert to see the spice fields. While observing their machines, they also see the sandworm, which can reach up to 400 meters, heading toward the harvester. While the carrying ship attempts to pick up the harvester, one arm comes short. Realizing that the people won't make it, Leto decides to go down and rescue his men, and as they fill the ships with their men, Paul is engulfed by the sand and has a vision. When Gurney returns to get to him, Paul was on his knees and a sandworm was close by. The two men barely make it onto the ship as the beast swallows the harvester. Upon arriving at the palace, Leto reprimands his son for his reckless behavior, to which his son apologizes. Later, when his mother visits him in his room, he reveals that his supposed allergic reaction to spice was just a misinterpretation and shares a shocking vision that he had, including the revelation that he knew that she was pregnant. That night, while Leto was still in his bed with his wife, he sees a strange light being shined as if transmitting a code. When he goes out to see what it is, he's attacked by the royal doctor, who temporarily paralyzes him with a venomous dart. Sitting him upright, the doctor apologizes for what he had done, telling him that he had to sacrifice him for his wife, who was the Baron's prisoner. He tells him that he will replace his false tooth with a poison that will be released when he bites down on it, asking him to use it when he's presented in front of Vladimir. Gurney is woken up by one of his men, who inform him that their protective barriers are down, and when he runs outside, he's shocked to see Harkonnen's ships hovering just above them, launching an attack. The Harkonnen's ship begin to destroy the army, beginning with their weaponry and their infrastructure. Accompanied by his men, Gurney charges forward, attacking their enemies. Atreides' men were massacred by the thousands as the mercenaries cut through the unexpected army. The captured prisoners are immediately executed without mercy, and Paul awakens and finds himself on a ship next to his mother, who was gagged and bound. Once they safely land in the desert, they're devastated to see their home burn to the ground. The two use the Fremen gear that had been on the ship to build a tent to keep them warm against the cold night. In his grand hall, the Baron was having a large meal to celebrate his victory, while Leto sits slumped down across the large table, still paralyzed and naked. The great doors open, and the doctor who had betrayed the Atreides enters, asking the Baron to fulfill his part of the bargain, but Vladimir just kills him. Sitting in front of Leto, the Baron leans closer to hear what he was saying, and realizing that it was his only chance, Leto bites down on the poisonous gas, killing everyone in the vicinity. Out in the desert, Paul has another vision and sees himself with blue eyes, just like the Fremen, fighting against the Harkonnens. He sees a holy war fought in his name, spreading across the world as he was the head of it. Frightened by the images that he had seen, Paul stayed up all night, contemplating his vision. The next morning, Paul and Jessica leave their tent and are found by Duncan and a native guide. She takes them to an old ecological site and lets them settle in, and while they were conversing about how to bring peace to the houses by having Leet, the guide, testify against the Emperor's treachery, the facility is overrun by mercenaries who are sent to kill Paul and his mother. Duncan sacrifices himself to give his family enough time to escape, and Light helps them out and provides them with a craft that would take them away. Staying behind, Light summons a sandworm and lets it consume her and the assassins that were after her. Paul flies the craft directly into the sandstorm to avoid the enemies who were after him, but is overwhelmed by the strength of the storm. After having another vision, Paul retracts the wings of the ship and lets the storm take them, and after spending several minutes in the storm, the force of the wind begins to calm down, letting Paul ignite the engine once more to fly them to safety. In the Harkonnen's ship, the Baron has survived the attack and was getting medical treatment to cleanse his body from the poison. When his nephew Rabin enters the chamber, he orders him to double spice production to pay for the invasion and exterminate the Fremen. In the Arrakis desert, Paul and Jessica walk for miles and encounter a Fremen tribe and see the man Duncan had brought to introduce to Leto. Paul also sees Chani, the girl that he's been having consistent visions about. Although the tribe's leader leader Stilgar offers them sanctuary, one of the tribe's members challenges Paul to a duel. The tribe gathers to watch the fight, and Cheney gives him her knife so he may die in honor. As soon as the fight begins, Paul kills the man easily, killing him as per the tribe's rules. After his victory, Paul felt devastated as the man was his first kill, but he was accepted into the tribe. Despite his mother's refusal, Paul decides to join the Fremen as one of their own, and the group travels back to their stronghold in the caves. On their way, Paul witnesses a Fremen riding a sandworm and is fascinated by it, and looking back at him, Cheney tells him that it was only the beginning. And with that last scene, part 1 of Dune comes to an end.